I'm 73 years old. I've been a priest for 49 years. And I need to tell you something that might surprise you coming from a man who spent his entire adult life serving the church. Most of what people believe about God, about faith, about what it means to live a spiritual life, it's incomplete. Sometimes it's flat out wrong. And I say this not to shake your faith, but to deepen it. I've sat with the dying. I've married young couples full of hope. I've buried children. I've heard confessions that would make your heart break. And through all of it, through nearly 5 decades of watching people struggle with God, with doubt, with suffering, I've learned things that seminary never taught me. Things I wish someone had told me when I was a young man kneeling in that chapel back in 1975, wondering if I was making the right choice. Here are 7 truths about God I learned the hard way. Maybe they'll save you some of the confusion I went through. Truth number 1, God doesn't answer prayers the way you think He does. When I was ordained in 1976, I believed prayer worked like a transaction. You ask, God delivers. Simple. I was young. I was naive. And that belief shattered within my first year. There was a woman in my parish, Margaret. She had a son, Tommy, 8 years old, diagnosed with leukemia. Margaret prayed every single day. She came to Mass. She lit candles. She begged God to save her boy. And I prayed with her. I believed with her. I remember kneeling beside her in that hospital chapel, holding her hands, promising her that God heard us. Tommy died 3 weeks before his 9th birthday. Margaret came to me after the funeral and she asked me a question I'll never forget. She said, "Father, did I not pray hard enough? Did I do something wrong?" I didn't have an answer then. I stammered something about God's plan, about mysteries we can't understand. But that moment haunted me for years. I went back to my room that night and I was angry. Angry at God for not answering. Angry at myself for making promises I couldn't keep. What I eventually learned is this: God isn't a vending machine. You don't put in prayers and get out results. Prayer changes you. It opens you. Sometimes it prepares you for what's coming, even when what's coming is unbearable. Margaret found her way back to faith eventually, not because she got answers, but because she stopped demanding them. And that's a kind of grace I didn't understand until I was much older. Truth number 2, doubt is not the enemy of faith. It's the deepening of it. I went through my own crisis of faith in 1989. I was 40 years old, supposedly in the prime of my ministry, and I woke up one morning and felt nothing. No sense of God's presence, no comfort in prayer, just emptiness, like someone had hollowed me out overnight. I remember standing at the altar one Sunday holding the Eucharist and thinking, what if none of this is real? What if I've wasted my life? The words came out of my mouth automatically, but they felt hollow, like reading a script in a language I no longer understood. I never told anyone. Priests aren't supposed to doubt, right? We're supposed to be the ones with answers. But I doubted everything. I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, wondering if I should leave, start over, find some other life. And here's what I learned. Doubt is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It's a sign that your old understanding of God is too small. It needs to break apart so something bigger can come in. My faith now, at 73, is nothing like my faith at 25. It's messier, it's less certain about the small things, but it's stronger, it's been tested, and the things that remain after doubt strips everything else away. Those are the things worth holding on to. Truth number 3, God is found more in suffering than in success. This one is hard to hear. Nobody wants it to be true. But in 49 years, I've seen it over and over again. I had a parishioner named Vincent, successful businessman, beautiful family, gave generously to the church. He came to Mass every week, sat in the 3rd pew, always shook my hand after. And honestly, his faith seemed shallow to me, not in a judgmental way, just observational. He treated God like he treated his business relationships. Transactional, polite. He'd say things like, God has blessed me because I've worked hard and lived right, as if faith were a formula that guaranteed results. Then in 2008, Vincent lost almost everything. The recession hit his company hard. He had to lay off people he'd known for 20 years. His wife left him 6 months later, said she didn't sign up for this version of their life. His kids blamed him for the family falling apart. I remember visiting him in his apartment, this tiny place compared to the house he used to live in, and he was sitting at the kitchen table crying. There were unpaid bills scattered everywhere. He looked like he'd aged 10 years and 6 months. He looked at me and said, Father, for the first time in my life, I actually need God. Not for success, just to survive. That's when his real faith began. Not in the big house with the beautiful family, in that cramped apartment, broken and humiliated. I've seen this pattern so many times. Suffering cracks us open, and somehow God gets in through the cracks. Truth number 4, being religious and being close to God are not the same thing. I've met people who go to church every single Sunday, who follow every rule, who can quote scripture better than I can, and they're some of the coldest, most judgmental people I've ever known. They know the rules, but they've missed the point entirely. And I've met people who haven't set foot in a church in decades, who struggle with addiction, who've made terrible mistakes, and they radiate something that I can only call holiness. There was a man named Arthur who used to come to our soup kitchen every Tuesday. Homeless for most of his adult life, struggled with alcoholism, had a criminal record. The regular churchgoers avoided him. They'd serve him food but wouldn't sit with him. I watched them move to different tables when he sat down. One winter, we had a young mother come in with 2 small children. She'd fled an abusive husband, had nothing but the clothes they were wearing. She was shivering. Arthur got up from his table, walked over to her, and took off his coat. It was the only warm coat he had, a green army jacket worn at the elbows. He draped it over her shoulders and said, "You need this more than I do, miss. God will keep me warm." Arthur died that February. Exposure. We found him under a bridge not far from the church, and I conducted his funeral, and maybe 10 people came. But I'll tell you something. Arthur understood something about God that many people who sit in pews their whole lives never grasp. He understood that God is in the giving, not in the getting. He understood that love isn't a feeling, it's a sacrifice. Being religious is about rules. Being close to God is about love. They're not the same thing. And sometimes the people furthest from the church are closest to God. Truth number 5, God speaks mostly in silence and we're too loud to hear. This took me decades to understand. When I was young, I expected God to speak clearly, a sign, a voice, something unmistakable. I wanted burning bushes and parting seas, and when I didn't get that, I assumed God wasn't speaking. But around 1997, I started doing silent retreats at a monastery upstate. 3 days, no talking, no reading, no distractions, just sitting in stillness. The first few times I thought I'd lose my mind. The silence was unbearable. My thoughts were so loud, so relentless. I couldn't stop planning, worrying, replaying conversations. But somewhere around the 3rd or 4th retreat, something shifted. The noise in my head quieted. It was like a radio finally finding the right frequency. And in that quiet, I began to notice something. A presence, not a voice exactly, more like a knowing, a gentle nudge, an intuition that felt different from my own thoughts. Most people never experience this because they never get quiet enough. We fill every moment with noise, phones, television, conversation, distraction. We're afraid of silence because silence forces us to face ourselves. And facing ourselves is uncomfortable. We don't like what we find there. But God is there in the silence, waiting, patient. Most of us are just too loud to notice. We're so busy talking to God that we never stop to listen. Truth number 6, forgiveness is the hardest spiritual practice and the most necessary. I counseled a woman once, Helen, who'd been holding a grudge against her sister for over 30 years. They'd had a falling out in 1972 over their mother's inheritance. Their mother had left the family home to the younger sister, and Helen felt betrayed. Ugly things were said, accusations of manipulation. The family split in two, and they never spoke again. Helen's sister reached out several times over the years, cards at Christmas, a letter when Helen's husband died. Helen threw them all away unopened. She told me once, "Father, she knows what she did. I'm not going to pretend it's okay." Her sister died in 2004, breast cancer. Helen wasn't there. She found out 2 days after the funeral from a distant cousin. Helen came to me afterward and she was destroyed, not by grief, but by regret. She sat in my office and couldn't stop shaking. She said, "Father, I wasted 32 years being angry and now I can never fix it. I can never tell her I forgive her. I can never hear her say she's sorry." That conversation changed how I think about forgiveness. We treat it like something we do for the other person, like we're letting them off the hook, but forgiveness isn't about them, it's about you. Helen spent 32 years carrying poison in her heart, and the only person it hurt was her. Her sister lived her life, had children, found happiness. Helen just stayed stuck, frozen in 1972. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It doesn't mean you forget. It means you stop letting it control you. You set it down. And that's one of the hardest things a human being can do. But it's also one of the most freeing. Truth number 7, in the end, the only thing that matters is how you loved. I've been with hundreds of people in their final hours. Hundreds. Held their hands, heard their last words. Watch the life leave their eyes. And I'll tell you what they talk about. It's not their careers. It's not their accomplishments. It's not the money they made or the things they own. They talk about people. They talk about love. They talk about the moments that mattered. A man I sat with just last year, he was 91. He'd been a successful attorney. Argued cases before the state Supreme Court, had his name on a building downtown. You know what he talked about in his final days? The summer of 1967 when he taught his daughter to ride a bike. The way his wife laughed on their honeymoon in Maine. The fishing trips with his father when he was a boy, sitting in a little rowboat at dawn, not catching much, just being together. He grabbed my hand near the end and said, "Father, I spent so much time on things that don't matter. The cases, the money, the reputation. I should have spent more mornings in that rowboat." Nobody on their deathbed wishes they'd spent more time at the office. Nobody regrets the vacations they took or the time they wasted with people they loved. They regret the opposite. The love they didn't express, the time they didn't give. The relationships they let fade because they were too busy, too proud, too distracted. At the end, love is the only thing that remains. Everything else burns away. I'm 73 years old. I've devoted my life to trying to understand God, to helping others find their way to Him. And after 49 years, I'm still learning. I still have doubts. I still have questions I'll never get answers to in this lifetime. But these 7 truths they've held up through every funeral, every crisis, every dark night of the soul. God isn't what we expect. Faith isn't certainty. And the life we're called to live is simpler than we make it. Love more, forgive faster, get quiet enough to listen. Stop keeping score with heaven. If any of this meant something to you, I'd ask you to share it. Leave a comment. Tell me what resonated. Maybe there's something else you want me to talk about, questions about faith, about doubt, about how to keep believing when it's hard. I'm still here, I'm still listening, and I've got more to say while I still have the time to say it. The collar doesn't give me special access to God, but the years have taught me a few things, and if sharing them helps even one person find their way, then this old priest has done something worthwhile. Thank you for staying until the end. May you find what you're searching for, and may you recognize it when you do.